Welcome back to Story Deep Dive with Dana and Rachel. This is a podcast with book coaches, editors, and besties where we discuss books not as readers, but as writers to draw inspiration from great books and lots of laughs. And today we are continuing our discussion of Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, a Rachel pick. Y'all gonna hear me say that over and over again. A Rachel pick.
It's gonna have a little bit of sass on it as well. It's like, this is a Rachel pick. Dana's never gonna she's never the next year, just watch 2027 is going to be all Dana picks. She's like, no, you're not allowed. It's just gonna be all romance.
Every time I think it can't get any more creepy, she just says, watch me. But it's all good. It's all good. I mean, which we're going to talk about today. Some great things to discuss with this book. But before we get into talking about this book, Rachel, what do you got going on over there at Story Cipher?
Yes, ma'am. So when this episode comes out, we are in the thick of July. Should be coming sort of off of our summer breaks, at least for me. So we're taking the first week of July, or the like end of June into the beginning of July off. So we have upcoming another book club for our fellows, who are, right, so the fellows are the graduates of Novel 101. So we do ongoing training. We, continue writing together, continue going through the revision process together. And actually we are doing one of our previous picks from the podcast, which is Spinning Silver. Spinning Silver was absolutely, I gave them several options to vote on. Sharp Objects was not one of them, because I was like, we just did Ninth House. I'm like, I can't make them read Sharp Objects next. That's just mean. Like, I really just sit and think about my choices. So I let them vote. They overwhelmingly voted for Spinning Silver. This is a well-loved book in the community. So we are going to have when we do book clubs, we usually do like multiple sessions over one book. So we try to go as in-depth as we can, and then also hit like specific skills that the book sort of exemplifies. So for a couple of sessions, we will look at the overall story structure. So 4-act structure, sources of conflict, and that kind of thing. And then usually we'll do at least a couple of additional sessions on like scene level work or line by line skills, depending on like what the community is really interested in, like what the book exemplifies and what the community is interested in learning more about. We'll do some additional sessions on some of those more like micro level skills. So we probably did 5 sessions on Ninth House, pulling out different facets of the story. So now we are doing Spinning Silver, and I'm really excited about it, and the community is super excited about it as well. And it's also a nice tonal change from Ninth House, which I am grateful to be able to bestow upon the fellows, instead of being like, you thought Ninth House was dark, let's read Sharp Objects, and just really putting them through that.
They'll be looking at you side-eyed like
they will never forgive me. So that's why we're doing not this book for book club, but Spinning Silver. I'm very excited.
Oh, you would be. I'm listening, y'all. My constant sort of note that I had throughout our entire pre-work for these episodes was, baby step me into your crazy. Listen, I probably was, but I don't feel like I was baby stepped into this. Okay. So I'm gonna try to make sure that you just protect them young, innocent readers.
Those sweet angels in your community.
Those sweet babies. They're just trying to learn how to write them books. But no. But so wait, when you say 5 sessions, do you just break them out over the summer, or break them out? Like, how do you break those out?
Yeah, so we do them. Yeah, so the way that the schedule works, so the fellows work in concert with the current cohort, right? So we always have cohort lecture the first Wednesday of the month. The second Wednesday of the month, when the cohort gets the trial by fire, which is the asynchronous video that I record of myself going through the process, the fellows then have their own designated workshop specific to their particular concerns. And so what we'll do is, like, one of those sessions when we do a book club pick, it'll be macro story structure. And then after we have that conversation, we'll have a discussion and they'll tell me more things that they want kind of to either that they're working on specifically or that they want to learn how to do better. And then I will create another session about the book, and we'll do that. We might do it later that month, we might do it the following month, and that sort of shapes our ongoing sessions that they have 1 or 2 times a month.
Got you. So basically what happens is like the thing that bubbles to the surface turns into, but is that a lot of like prepping and presenting, or is stuff that you do the baseline stuff and then you sort of let whatever is the spin-off points from that come from the actual discussion?
So the individual sessions are a lot of prepping and presenting, especially when we're first just looking at the macro structure. So I'm identifying where our 4-act structure breaks are and, walking them through, here's our inciting incident, midpoint, all's lost, etc. And doing all of that. And then based on what bubbles up to the surface from the conversation, I will create a new presentation to teach on the topic that they want to learn about. So it's a lot of prep work. We go real hard. And so that's all I can say is it's a lot of prep work. It's been a lot of time.
Listen, I'm going to be like Rachel when I grow up, because I'd be like, girl.
The thing is like, I only have one gear and it's all the way. And it doesn't even occur to me that there's a different way that you could approach this.
Well, but how many book picks do you have over the summer?
So we only have one. Yeah. So one book pick over the summer, and then I will create lectures and sessions specific to using that book as sort of like almost like our common language that we can use to discuss the topic. Yeah.
It's sort of like when we did the breakdown and we did that same book for reading it for the 4-act structure. And then we also read like a whole series, and now we're reading a trilogy together. That makes sense. One day I'm going to do it like you. Girl, they probably be tired of me. I do a little bit. I don't do it every time, but because you only do a couple of books like that a year, that makes sense. Because, we do a new book every month.
Exactly.
We only have 2 months out of the year when we don't have a book club selection. So we don't have one in June, and we don't have one in December. Yeah. So only twice a year when we don't have them. So that's 10 books.
Yes, I was going to say, you guys are reading and like doing one book per book club versus we probably do roughly a book a quarter and then, break it out. So that's the way that. Good. Yeah. Oh my God. We couldn't do more than that. None of us would survive that.
I like that. Girl, don't get me to thinking.
Oh, maybe 2027 is the year of a book a quarter. No. Oh, okay. You probably already planned. I don't know. I just feel like you've probably already planned 2027. You're like, I know.
I'm starting.
I've got my 5-year plan, and I'm like, you guys vote. What do you want to hear about? I'll do a presentation. I will do it. Like,
I still want to do the movies because it was voted out after we did the triple threat. But I still want to do the movies. But maybe that. But we have the whole year, so it would have to be next year.
Yeah. You plan out, like I said, you plan out way far in advance, which, speaking of want to be like when I grow up, I want to be like you when I grow up. It's like have the year, and it's just, I've set like a track for myself. That's gonna be my goal for 2027. If I start now, then maybe we can get 25% of the way there in 2027.
Come on.
Which is better than no progress at all.
Exactly. So. You got a baby step. See, baby step into that crazy.
Baby step into the crazy.
Come on.
Speaking of baby stepping into crazy, Dana, what do you have going on over at Danger Tales?
Y'all, listen, we're talking about it right now, but right now, by the time you all are hearing this, we are going over our GOAT, like our OG book, and so listen. Y'all, I feel like I say this every time, but it's the caveat of that we record so far in advance. So at the time of recording, I'm literally getting my reading list ready, and I'm just, every time I write something down, I'm thinking, who signed us up for this? And then And then, of course, I'm all like preparing. I have my number one goat that are okay. So, what is a goat? Let me just say that at first, because then I don't want to be like so, our goat is like your greatest of all time for your genre. So, you're looking for a very specific book that is the greatest of all time. It's usually a book that's been around over 10 years. It's ranked well in your niche, that it normally has a lot of reviews, that's rated really well. And what you're looking for is to establish the sort of baseline for your genre. That's what your goat is. And so this may be if you are looking in your genre and you do a search for the best books, the best fantasy books, right?
Mhm.
Or the best romantasy books of all time, that kind of thing. That may be a good starting place for you to look for your goat. And what I'm doing is reading at least one, and I have two picked, but at least one that's in my genre that I write. But also, everyone that's a part of book club is reading their own goat. And then
Yeah.
we're bringing back, like, sort of farming our stories and bringing back the loot to the call. And
So good.
so I think it is. I think it makes everyone so nervous. So we are starting in advance. So we're picking now in the time of June so that people have time to pick, because usually looking for your goat is really hard and people try to rush it, and you really don't want to rush it. It
Yeah.
establishes the foundation of everything. It helps you to know what you're looking for when you're reading. And so right now, I listen, I was so ready to start reading my goat, and then I had to finish this book, and I was just like, I
And
was
your
about to
goat is, of
start it.
course, something in a romance that you're like probably
Oh,
looking forward to
you're
reading, and
yes.
you
And
got
then,
hung up with.
girl, the craziness and shenanigans of, was it Winbay, whatever it's called. So yeah, so that's what we're doing. Like, we're getting ready. So everyone is sort of planning their reading list. They're starting to share, bringing it to Q&A if they're having issues with finding a particular book that's in their triple threat.
Oh, that's great.
And I think it's going to be so interesting because several of the students are in inner circle, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that this is going to change so much. I
Mm-hmm.
just got to hold my tongue and wait for them to
Mm-hmm.
get there, because
Yeah.
I want to be like, see, this is what I've been trying to tell you, you know?
Yeah.
I can't say that. I can't say that. So watching them pick and starting to be like, wait a minute, this versus that. And I'm like, yes, this is what we've been talking about. So
Yeah.
it's going to be very interesting. And the fact that we have people in different sub genres, and then we also have somebody that's cozy. We have romantic. Like, we have. It's going to be very interesting, and I think to see what rises to the top in the conversation is going to be really interesting. And I feel like I am going to be a little bit on the hot seat of sort of the continuity and sort of bringing it all together. But I'm not concerned
Yeah.
about that. I think that's going to be the easy part. I think it's going to make people want to read other people's selections,
Yeah.
um, and to get examples that aren't in your normal area. Like, so many
Mm-hmm.
people loved when we did that cozy that we just finished.
Yeah.
It just, so many people. So it was just really good at looking at characters and setup and payoffs, and so I think that's going to be one of those moments too. So yeah, that's what we're doing. I don't know. We'll see how well we pull it off. I think it's going to go beautifully. I
Oh,
mean,
it's gonna be
I'm
so
gonna read
good.
mine. Listen, I'm gonna read mine. That's You're like, listen, I'm gonna get mine. You better get yours. So that's how it's gonna be. We're gonna see how my list
I
holds up.
have a question for you about the
Yes.
the goat picks.
Okay.
So, when you're picking a goat, you do pick it for your subgenre as well, right? So like romance has, you've got dark romance, you've got rom-com, you've got cozy, like, you have these like kind of more specific niches. You pick your goat like best cozy of all time, right? Like you pick it down to that level of specificity, right?
You can, but sometimes you'll find that it's hard to do that because the subgenre has not been around that long in the way that we see it
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
So you may find that a good example would be a good example might be werewolf shifters,
Hmm.
right? In general, you could say, like, I'm gonna kind of date myself, but you could say something like, oh, you can look at things like Anne Rice. You can look at like if you want to go all the way back, but now that's probably 20 years, 30 years back. But the point
Mm-hmm.
is, you really don't see werewolf shifters in romance the way that you see now. So technically,
Ah,
you could pick a romance, like a contemporary
yeah,
romance, because romance reader elements are the same across the board, even if you're
yeah,
doing shifters.
yeah.
But it's better if you get closer. So one of the sort of offshoots that I kind of point them towards is urban fantasy.
Yeah, that's what I
You
was thinking
will,
would be like a good comparable
yeah.
arena.
hmm But then it means that if your goat is not in perfect alignment, like in harmony with
Hmm.
your sub niche, then you really have to be very specific with your evergreen and your chart topper,
Hmm.
which are usually easier, but that
Yeah.
goat will usually get it. But the reality is, what you wanted, I normally steer them towards whatever is going to ground you the most, or even if it's the area where you need the most assistance with and understanding. And in
Hmm.
this case, having a contemporary romance or romance in general, having those elements is the foundation of everything that sort of is an offshoot of romance. So
Yeah.
it'll get you there, but having something else, because doing something like an urban fantasy will give you more world building
Yeah.
exposure. It will give you exposure to otherness, where there are different people groups,
Hmm.
magic potentially, like all those other things that could come into play.
Yeah.
And then you begin to sort of bring in the other nuances and details based on your other picks.
Gotcha, gotcha. So it's sort of like
Hmm.
ideally, right, you want to have as much alignment as possible so you're getting almost like maximum exposure to the things
Exactly.
you're going to have to deal with in your particular book. But if that's not possible, then you find as close as you can get.
Right. Because the sort of cornerstone of the triple threat, that's what I call it when we're doing this, like this, your ideal picks to learn your niche, is the fact that you are watching a genre evolve through your
Hmm.
reading.
Oh, so good.
And
So good.
so, thank you. I think so too. But I'm biased. You are too, but we're not gonna talk about that today. Um so part of the ability to see that evolution and to be able to point it out and to become knowledgeable of it
Mhm.
is to have everything as aligned as possible. And so that's why it helps to um spend a lot of time and to dig in, and that you work really hard to meet the criteria, because sometimes
Mhm.
people will sort of try to play with that, and I'm like, no, that criteria is there for a reason, right? It's
Yeah.
showing you how well that book did. Readers, they show you where their attention lies with their dollars, right?
Mhm.
And so that is really important, and so that's a part of the process as well. And I find that what happens is a lot of people are reading what's happening right now, and you don't have any foundation, right?
Mhm.
And so what's happening is, oh, I think the best part of this is that when if you've been reading a lot of what's happening now, going back, you can begin to see how things have changed, and it gives you an understanding of where are some of my wiggle room,
Yeah.
where are some of the areas that are a little squishy, where I like this, I love playing with this, right? I don't want to just focus on maybe pack politics, but maybe I want to do something in I don't know, in rivals or something else to establish those shifters. And as long as I do these things and I ground it in this way, then
Mhm.
this gives me sort of that runway to be able to do that. And you can see that across several books. This is another reason why too, and I'll say this last part, why you may find that you have more than the three. The three is a bare
Mhm.
minimum. But
Yeah.
once you've had those three and you've done the right things, any
Mhm.
other comp that you bring in, fire.
Yeah.
Because then you begin to pick your comps according to what are those gaps that you want to fill in. How have others handled this element in your
Mhm.
genre? What are some things that I always, my test is always the sparkling vampires, right?
Yeah.
I love them. but but my thing was like if you go all the way back, she chose where to have that wiggle room and that difference, right?
Yeah.
She still had a lot of the things that are common, so that when she got ready to push that thing, even though it enraged some people, I think it also helped to establish the difference in the fact that she wasn't for an adult audience, but a YA,
Yeah.
right, slash new college audience. So I think those are the little things where even like what we're going to talk a lot about in our discussion today, right?
Yeah.
Like some those choices may seem asinine to somebody, maybe a hard eye roll, but if you make the decision and you stand on business,
Hmm.
then what happens is you get an opportunity to almost to do what those books show us over time, shift culture,
Yeah.
shift the norm. And
Hmm.
that's when you get into some real good reading and great writing. No
Yeah.
matter what you say about her, like it still stands out.
Hmm.
So yep, that's what we're doing, all the things,
That's
having a
so
great
good.
time.
Well, what I love is like that is sort of accidentally just perfectly in keeping with like the conversation we're going to have today,
Oh
right?
yeah.
About like sticking to your genre, like understanding your genre, being able to nail the genre and the amount of wiggle room that you have when you do that to do the things that you kind of want your story to do. So that's really, but you do have to be grounded in your genre, right? You have to know what those things are in order to be able to do that. And that's why for romance, for crime, for fantasy, for literally any genre, comps are absolutely essential to understand your genre.
Yes, and the other part about this, and then yes, I think first of all, I'll be picking my stuff on purpose, but bringing it all together because sometimes we got to see it from different angles for it to
Mhm.
land, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just, I mean, depending on how you learn. But
Yeah.
the other part of this is that this is how you can learn from some of the best writers ever.
For
And
sure.
not, this is how you can also ensure that there's no way you're going to copy anyone. What you do is you get the opportunity to get inspiration and to get like they're tutoring you,
Mhm.
they're tutoring you on your craft. And it also is something that you can go back to again and again. And the more that you read across these books, the more that you pick books. I'm huge on picking books that you enjoy because you are going to read those books over and over and over again. Pick books that you enjoy. That you don't mind going back in and reading it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, especially once you know that that's your jam, and then taking that information in and sort of almost like reinterpreting it and reimagining it through the lens of your idea. Man,
Yeah.
that's when we begin to nerd out. But
Yeah.
instead of nerding out, what we are going to do is we're about to get into this conversation because Rachel got us on some other stuff. Okay. In the best possible way. Y'all, I'm saying this in the best possible way, but I did think she was low key crazy, but it's okay because she's going to give us we're going to do the blurb for sharp objects, and then we are going to jump into our discussion of the plot in this story. Now, can I just say our caveat? Our normal caveat is there is no way that we could talk about all the things that is going down in this story. We are
Mhm.
cherry picking as always, but I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all by this conversation today. So, with that said, Rachel, go ahead and hit us with that summary.
Yes, ma'am. And before I do the summary, I'll also just add, I'll say this in every episode in case someone's coming in the middle. If you have not read this book and you do have content sensitivities, I do
Mm.
recommend this is a really rough read in terms of material and topics that it covers. I think she handles them well, but that does not diminish the fact that there's some potentially very triggering content. So if you do have content sensitivities or are concerned about that, I highly recommend checking out something like the trigger warning database, so that you can find out if this story is right for you to read. So I'm just that caveat for every episode for anybody new. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into the summary. Fresh from a brief stay at a psych hospital, reporter Camille Preaker faces a troubling assignment. She must return to her tiny hometown to cover the murders of two preteen girls. For years, Camille has hardly spoken to her neurotic, hypochondriac mother or to the half sister she barely knows, a beautiful 13-year-old with an eerie grip on the town. Now installed in her old bedroom in her family's Victorian mansion, Camille finds herself identifying with the young victims a bit too strongly. Dogged by her own demons, she must unravel the psychological puzzle of her own past if she wants to get to the story and survive this homecoming.
So, as we jump into this plot, what are some of the topics that you want us to cover as we discuss sharp objects?
Yes, ma'am. So I've got three main things that I want to make sure we talk about. So the first one is really talking about crime story construction and the way that your protagonist's particular occupation or relationship to the investigation shapes how you develop the story. Number two is going to be using your genre conventions and the substance of your plot as a way to explore theme and marrying those things so that they actually come together and don't work at cross purposes. And then finally, I definitely want to talk about tone because tone of the story, one of the things that's really important as it pertains to plot is that it helps you to calibrate what actually happens on the page. So the kinds of stuff you put in your plot and what we see on the page more specifically. What about you, Dana?
I feel like a lot of what I'm talking about is going to roll right into what you're talking about. One of the things that stood out to me is sort of like she did a great job of mashing, whether it's, I don't know, I'm really curious about how you classify the genre because I sort of wrote down like psychological thriller sort of vibe, and mixed with this. A character, a strong character arc. So it was this mixture of like who done it and what is wrong with her, or like who is this woman, who is Camille. And so I sort of think that that was a very interesting choice when it comes to like what's driving the story and the way she's folded that together. Another thing that I enjoyed and wanted to talk about is sort of the escalation of the conflict and the stakes. I love a good sort of concentric circle of this thing of like starting out really broad and we get into the story and we're thinking about the town and the girls, the death of these girls. And as the story gets further and further along, that ring gets smaller and smaller and smaller until we really are pinned on Camille. And I think that's a very interesting choice that I think you can help us out with a lot because it is still really sort of rooted in the crime. And the last thing that I want to talk a little bit about is that I think she did such a beautiful job in how she managed information.
Yeah.
Her ability to sort of drip this out. Y'all, listen, when we got on this call today to prepare for our recordings, I was just like, I don't know if I like this story because it was just too much going on. However, the way that she dripped information and that she chose to reveal things, whether there were sensitive things, things about Camille's life, things about the town, how she sort of wove in those twists was just done beautifully. And I think it's something that was needed for this story because the information is so uncomfortable. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
else to say it, but I think
It's
it's
putting it
also
mildly. That's great.
oh good. Thank you. Thank you. But also the fact that I think this is a really great way to handle, and this is kind of spilling a little bit into characters, but a great way to handle when you have this character who is sort of has so many layers and you want those layers to be a part of this journey.
Yeah.
Right, because sometimes it's a funny thing of like how do you put it in, but because that is also part of what's going on in this plot and it feeds into it, it really did a sort of a great job of bringing those two things together and her ability to sort of drip out that information. So to sort of get us started, I'd love for you to sort of start us off with well, can we talk a little bit of like the setup just a little bit before we get into the conversation of like of her occupation and how that feeds into this, or is it just me? Because I feel like
Yeah.
we don't do spoilers, but I think having a setup like what's going on will help us with understanding a lot of the topics that we want to discuss today.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you just want to talk when you say setup, do you mean generally about, what like the context of the story or define that for me and I will happily oblige?
Yeah, that's yeah, kind of like because she's a reporter, and they sort of said in the blurb, it's sort of like how she gets here, because then that goes into her occupation, the things you want to talk about, like access, authority, and all
Yeah.
of that will fold into the setup and how we
Yeah.
get here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the context of the story, right? Camille Preaker is a reporter working for a small Chicago paper, therefore in Chicago. So, meaning she has left the small town of Wind Gap. She's left for Chicago. Now she's a reporter. Her boss gets wind of the murders of two preteen girls. Well, the murder of one, the disappearance of another, and sends her back to Wind Gap to say, hey, you have a connection here. Go get this story. Now, her mentor is also her editor, right? Her mentor is he says this is like literally chapter 1, so it's not a spoiler. He's like, hey, I think it'd be good for you, right, to go back home, and he knows that she's got a tough past, and he's I think it'll be cleansing, to go back there. Plus, you have an inside scoop, and this could put our paper on the map. Like, this is kind of her shot at being great as a reporter, right? Getting that sort of like story that really makes her career or establishes her career. And that's how she gets pulled into the story. She didn't even know that these murders were happening. And again, Curry, her editor, is like, you don't even know what's going on in your hometown. And she's like, Curry, you have no idea. I keep myself out of it. And that's what pulls her into the story, is a journalistic assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that you will see in crime stories, and this is so crazy helpful, is the protagonist's profession, which basically, right, their profession defines their relationship to the investigation. So pulling conflict and actually pulling how the story progresses or is able to progress from their actual occupation is one of the best opportunities for you to develop your investigation with intention. Because what your protagonist does for a living defines how they have to approach the investigation, right? So a police officer's investigation is going to look very different from a journalist's investigation, right? Because a police officer has access and authority that they can rely on to get information. A journalist has some authority, but certainly less than a police officer, right? You can shut your door in the face of a journalist. Technically, you could do that to a police officer, but they do have avenues, right, by which they can write something like a warrant that they can, or a subpoena, right, require you to talk to them, essentially. So when you've got a reporter, she is dependent on whether or not people want to talk to her and her relationship to the police, whether she's going to get information. And so that is going to define how she actually goes about doing this. So again, a police officer, right, that's going to look one way. If we think about another book that we've had in the podcast lineup, right, The Woman in the Library. Our protagonist is a full-blown amateur sleuth, right? She has zero access. And that also defines how she is going to investigate the crime, because she has really nothing to go off of. Only that she was like in proximity to the murder when it happened, right? So in this case, Camille, as a journalist, her investigation is going to be impacted by the fact that she has some credential to talk to people and to request information from the police because she is a journalist. But she doesn't have the same amount of authority, again, that a police officer would. And then in this story specifically, right, some people decidedly do not want to talk to her because she's a journalist, and they're like, you're gross. I can't believe you're trying to, air our town's dirty laundry, and they don't want to talk to her. That's one form of problem. The other form of problem is that some people are all too willing to talk to her because she's a journalist, because they want to see their name in the newspaper. And it means that some of the things that they tell her are sometimes outright lies, or are dolled up because they want it to look good in print, or they've watched too much TV or seen too many movies where they think this is what a quote for the newspaper should sound like. And that also obscures the truth of information she's actually getting, because people are like putting it on for the reporter, right? And so the point here is, when you're writing a crime story, really identifying, okay, what does my protagonist do for a living? What is their relationship to the investigation? Because you can actually use that as an amazing springboard for creating your conflicts and shaping the specific events that kind of unravel or unroll in your story with that, so that the decision that you made for whatever their occupation is actually matters and meaningfully impacts the story.
Mhm. I love that. I mean, even to the point where, I mean, in the beginning, that's one of the reasons why Curry sent her there. But on the flip side, that's exactly why she shouldn't have been there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that same reason, whether it was her history there, her legacy, her family, the stereotype that had been placed on her because of her past ways in
Mm-hmm.
town. But all of that is are all things that Gillian used like a master, right?
Oh,
She used that. And sometimes I'm like, girl, pump the brakes. But it makes it like really, really good. I'm so glad that you brought in when we had this conversation in another story. Um, I was talking in our book club in one of our most recent books, and this plays no matter whether you're talking about an amateur sleuth, or in this case, she's a investigative reporter. um all of the more you can make their lens and their skill set lean into what you're doing, it makes it even better, and that becomes a really great distinguishing factor that people are looking for with snazzle dazzle. You can
yeah.
do it with something as simple as this is their job, this is how they see it, so it's how they begin to relate to people, this is how they
Mm-hmm.
begin to search for clues. That's one of the biggest things that I've learned from us doing this podcast. I love it. Cause you
Yeah.
see it, but you just like, oh, that's right. And so it can be something so small, but that
Yeah.
small difference is the difference between this story and the next, right?
Yeah, right. And it's cool because it adds stakes in their own way, right? So like a journalist might be worried about losing their job, or might be worried about, right, the make or break story, or how their story could negatively, right? There's a lot of conflict between reporters and police of like, if you put this out there, you might ruin our investigation, versus a police officer who's worried, might be worried about like preserving evidence, right? The way they do the investigation matters because it could affect whether or not it actually stands up in court, or like the hierarchy of their superiors versus what's right for the case and what the higher ups want. And so it really, like, it can really help flavor your story with so much specificity and stakes that are specific to your protagonist and what they care about. And so you're getting like plot and character out of
At the
just
same
that
time.
simple choice. And
Mhm.
there's so much opportunity there that it would be a shame to kind of like overlook that opportunity that's sitting right there in your story.
Mm. One of the ways it was done so good in this story was because of that, she put herself in situations and in places because she didn't know how else to get the information.
Hmm.
Right. And so it put her in very compromising
Yes.
positions and places because other doors were being closed off to her because
Hmm.
of her. I mean, even the point of just like staying in town and still writing articles.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you are digging a hole for yourself, girl. So yes, absolutely. Okay. So this sort of like piggybacks a little bit on when I talk about like what's driving this story. And you're talking about our occupation, but part of this then comes into like the crime that we're here to solve and what actually gets her there in the first place. But
Yeah.
then this sort of this really interesting way that Gillian makes us very curious about who Camille is, even in that blurb. Like when you hear somebody is like recently being released from, and then she's going back to her hometown, you already are side eyeing this entire situation. So the
Hmm.
way that she begins to sort of unfold while we are figuring out like what happened to, I think the first little girl, her name is Anne, what
Hmm.
happened to Anne, then we are starting to realize that Camille's responses are a little different. And Camille's family dynamic is not normal. And
Mm-hmm.
all of these things begin to like tip off our spidey sense. But the thing, but she paid us back with drama, y'all, because because baby,
It's
when
even
it
weirder
comes
than
to
you can imagine.
why, Sway? Why? But and so here it becomes this thing of like as I was reading the story and sort of watching it unfold, it reminded me of the conversation that we had when we were talking about Fourth Wing,
Mm-hmm.
where there's this responsibility to have both the romance and the fantasy or the otherness sort of playing simultaneously. And in this case, it's like you're looking for that the story about what happened to these little girls. And she's giving you, it's like, but I'm giving you this one for free. And
Yeah.
and she's starting to seed it with Camille's responses, her being back in this town, her interactions with her mother, her interactions with her sister, her technically her stepdad, and all of this sort of begins to sort of make those two threads run neck and neck, and they are codependent, and the
Mm-hmm.
payoff, chef's kiss.
Yeah.
So I think that was a very interesting take because y'all, I'm gonna say a million times, this is not my sort of jam. However, when you start seeing like, wait, what? Like you're sitting up and it's just like, okay, so her doing that, it's sort of like what you'll talk about a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more later in the episodes, but being able to sort of you have that plot, but also it's allowing her to seed and to bring in the theme and
Yeah.
make it feel more well-rounded. And in
Mm-hmm.
this case, it becomes very deep and almost not just murky. It's like unsettling.
Yeah.
It makes you very uncomfortable, but almost too nosy to stop reading.
Yeah.
Like,
That's it really is like this interesting blend of, you've got narrative drive coming from two lanes, where
yes,
first of all, like, we've got a murder mystery, right, which always makes us like, and who did it, right? And we want to, like, meet all the people and find out who our suspects are and start, trying to suss out that information. But then you're also getting this mystery of what happened to Camille. Like, where, what, how did we get here? Why are things the way they are? And it makes me think of Ninth House, right? Where it's like we see Alex and the kind of person she is, and we're like, okay. And we get this information dripped out over time that's building up our understanding of who she is. So rather than just like dumping it on us like all at once and being like, here's all the terrible things that happened to me, and then we're like, okay, and we don't know what to do with that information. It's dripped out over time so that every time we get another detail, we're like, I beg your pardon, what? And we keep leaning in so that you've got that like dual cylinder narrative drive pushing the story forward and causing the reader to lean in.
and I listen. We may have said it earlier. I think we haven't said it here, which is I think her doing this so well gave her a lot of runway to be able to go deeper with that theme, even though it made it even more uncomfortable for you, the
Mm-hmm.
reader. It gave her a lot of wiggle room and to be able to explore it because it was so in sort of in tandem and intertwined
Yeah.
with that murder mystery or that solving like what happened to this. Then it goes from one body to two. Sorry, y'all. We
That's
gotta
not really a
not give.
spoiler because it,
Okay, thank you.
even though it starts as a disappearance, it on the back cover it says the murder of two
Okay,
preteen girls. So
okay.
we kind of go in already knowing that there's.
Look, Rachel is always very like that's not. I'd be like, I think everything is a spoiler alert because I don't know what is what. Okay,
If we can split the difference between our approaches, we should be able to land in something that's like
somewhere.
reasonable spoiler free territory.
So with that said, that sort of really sort of segues very cleanly into your next topic about using plot to explore theme. I sort of knocked on that door, but I'd love to hear you talk about this because this story does this really well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is one of the most most important things you can really think about with your theme, right? Because you don't want your theme and your plot to be at cross purposes, right? Because then one of them is going to feel tangential. So if we had a different plot, right, it would feel like trying to jam this other thing you want to talk about into like a square peg round hole kind of situation where you're like trying to jam it in there, but the plot isn't creating the opportunity for you to explore that thing. That's what you want to see in your plot, right? The plot should be an opportunity to explore a theme, because that's how you actually bring the reader into the experience and let them experience the theme, rather than trying to like punch through the story and grab them by the shoulders and be like, did you get it yet? Like, I want to tell you about this thing, which is unnerving when you're reading fiction and you feel like, right, the author is trying to break through to be like, I'm trying to tell you something, can you hear me? And you're like, I don't know. I just wanted to read a book. So the way that she does this is, so I would say that one of the primary themes that's operating in the story is violence and the forms that it takes, right? And of course, like, a crime story is a prime opportunity to explore this kind of thing using these genre conventions that we have. So the story starts with a body, right? Who are those bodies? Pre-teen girls. Our protagonist investigates, right? So almost, yeah, pretty much every scene, Camille is doing exactly what we would expect to see in a crime story, which is furthering the investigation as she's trying to she's piecing together the story, but right, she's wrapped up in, she doesn't just want to report it, she wants to know who actually is responsible for this, right? She uncovers clues. It is the contents of the investigation, right? Talking to residents of Wind Gap, the clues that she uncovers in the course of those conversations that continue to illuminate that theme, right? We see people's perspectives on violence, on girls, on, the nature of what it is to live in Wind Gap through that investigation. And then it still ends with a reveal of who the killer is. And that also tells us something about the theme that she's communicating. And so what's happening is literally the contents of the events that happen become the vehicle through which she is able to express the theme. So she is fully delivering on the crime story we were promised, while also getting to explore in depth this theme of violence and control and, female experience.
This sort of kind of taps on sort of how she does this, and what in my note of, she does a great job of sort of dripping this information out, because as she's doing that, listen, some of the things that she reveals, you would not say, tell me more, right?
Yes.
But because she's opening it as a question, or Camille's response to something, it makes you curious to close that curiosity loop.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you open up to close that curiosity loop, she barges right through that door. So when she's exploring that theme and she is going through this investigation, it's all about how those circumstances, those clues, that lack of information begins to tap on and resurface other things. And this, I'm sure we will talk more about this in characters, at least some, but I think that was masterfully done. Again, that's one of those moments where you would have so much information on your character about who they are and why they operate the way that they do, and how they see the world and how they see themselves in the world, and how do they operate in this confined space. And that confined space really is her mind. Oh my gosh. And so, and all of that is beginning to reveal more and more about her. And every time she's revealing something, she's not just answering the question, she's taking us deeper.
Yeah.
Answer the question, taking us deeper and darker. Answer the question, take us deeper. Answer the question, go deeper, darker. It's like, girl, do you stop? Don't, no more. Just say the end. But it gives this story so much, I would say, application, even though as someone who loves a good happily ever after, I was not happy. Okay, I was not happy because I want my happily ever after. And I'm like, I don't care if you call it cheesy, bring on the cheese.
If
But
this is the
here,
alternative, I will take the cheese. Holy hell.
listen, all the cheeses, all the cheeses. So what we do is we get the dual sort of engines that are driving this story. We get her masterful and skillful way that she is sharing that information and dripping that information out across this story, and then that sort of makes me think of more, or talk about, before I kind of think about like the stakes in the concentric circles, it makes me think about you talking more about that tone, because
Yeah.
part of this is working because we understand from the jump that this is not your everyday regular investigation. Like, we kind of already knew it from the nature of the crime,
Mm-hmm.
but the moment she is back there, even before she's back there, we
Mm-hmm.
already know this is not a simple ask. This is not a simple scenario. So I'd love for you to talk some about that tone, because I think that tone helps to cover so many different areas and fills in so many gaps, that allows things to sort of ebb and flow together in the story.
Yeah, I think, tone is something that we've talked a little bit about in previous picks, but I think this one is such, like, it's an exemplar of the importance of knowing what that tone is and setting it immediately, like right
Hmm.
away.
Yeah.
um because your tone, what you are going for in the experience you want the story to create, is going to help you calibrate what, first of all, how far that story goes, right? What actually happens, as well as how much we see on the page. So, a
Mhm.
really good counterexample, right, is going to be The Woman in the Library, which is tonally much, much lighter than this story, right? Than Sharp Objects. In The Woman in the Library, we don't actually see the body, right? We hear a scream, that, and we know someone was murdered. That is the extent that we are given. um in Sharp Objects, we not only see the bodies, they are described to us in detail, right? So you're even thinking about that level of granular decision. So sometimes you'll get a murder mystery where we do see the body, but we don't spend too much time about how horrible it is, or what, how, awful it looks. This story holds no descriptions, right? Like, this story is going to tell you in detail what it is that Camille is seeing, and going into the details of the, like, not just, when we see the body, but the gruesome details of other facets that this story is going to explore. And that is, you determine that level, right? Like, the tone that you want your story to set, and the experience you want it to have, that is going to help you. I think, especially, this is going to be true across all genres, but especially if you're looking at something like crime, right? Where there's kind of there's a surprising amount of spectrum tonally for something like murder, right? A
Mhm.
cozy murder mystery versus something like Sharp Objects, right? And all of that space in between, so that you can calibrate the experience you want the reader to have. And then, very importantly, as soon as we get into the story, you are setting that tone for us. You are letting us know, so that if we are browsing the bookstore and we're like, I'm going to take a look at the first chapter, you know whether or
You
not you should
know.
put that book down, keep
Exactly.
going, or find something
Exactly.
else, right? And
Exactly.
that's really, really, like, this is such an object lesson in how important setting that tone is, and then maintaining that tone.
My mind is going two places, and I'm going to try to go there as skillfully as possible. Number one, it makes me think about the fact that having this discussion is sort of another way of talking about that reader promise,
Mhm.
because you are establishing that up front and doing it well, which was really needed in this story, and it was done. What it does is it establishes that foundation, and that lets us kind of get that moment of like, are you in? Keep going, like,
Yeah.
give me a thumbs up. So there's that. The other thing that this story does in the setting of the tone and the way that she sort of brings us into this world, it is establishes almost like the foundation, in a sense of here's what you can expect, and this is just the beginning. So it is a great example of conversations that we've had before, of that if this is the way you come out the gate, then it only gets bigger, better, badder, worser. I don't think that's right, but it's what's going down for the rest of the story. And she does
Yeah.
that so well,
Mm-hmm.
almost creepily. And I'm making up words today, but and that's probably one of the best things about this book, is like that does not disappoint. It creeped me out. It had me ready to throw the Kindle, but she did that well. So if you're like, tap out, this is not for me, then you will be absolutely correct, because everything else going forward, it's like you are on the roller coaster and you cannot get off until the ride is done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think this is not the level that most would want to operate, but I think it's easy to see the operation of it when you are looking at it in this capacity, because then it helps you to understand. It's like you're not just setting expectations, you are not just telling them this is what to expect going forward. The level of detail, the level of complexity,
Mm-hmm.
and the nature of Camille's story, it only gets deeper, darker, better as you move forward. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's something to be said about ma- mastering that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, man, I mean, which is why this book was so good. Was there any other details that you wanted to add to that when it comes to tone? Um,
I'll just add one more. This is just another, this is thinking about how you use your setting to also kind of contribute to that
yes.
tone. Because you think about, so there's a couple of things here. Number one, right? Tone is partly set by what you put in front of us and the terms in which you describe it, right? So this book, I mean,
Mhm.
it verges on like horror, right? Because of how it's described and how the book is delivered. And even to, if you think about the town of Windgap, where the thing that employs the most people in the town is a meat processing plant. Okay. Horrible detail, gory, gross, off-putting. And the point there is that, again, your tone, like the ways that you communicate tone and then the way that you evoke that experience for the reader, comes down to details, what you tell us and how you tell it to us, how much camera time that thing is getting, because we hear more about the meat processing plant than we ever wanted to. And the
Okay.
crazy thing is, it's not even like, it's not a lot. Like, it's not like it keeps coming up where it's like, oh, remember how gross the meat processing plant is? And it just sort of repeatedly comes up. But she gives us, she, first of all, she puts it on camera. So we're like, oh, yes, this is a thing that happens here. And then Camille's experience of it, again, bringing that kind of gruesome, that sort of gory nature of that work onto the page. And so thinking about, again, the specific details that you choose for your story, and then when you're actually describing, right, when you're actually showing us the story, that also is a part of like tone and how you, because you can also, if you wanted to throttle it back, right, you might gloss over details a little bit more, you might not go quite so in depth on how the meat processing works or whatever, right? And so the way you toggle those is also a part of how you sort of evoke that tone and either push further into it or dial it back.
Yeah, and there are so many things about this story that I'm still trying to figure out how I would word it. But I'm just saying, like, forgive me in advance that I may be handling this a little bit sloppy, but I feel like the way she did it here is almost like a sequence of permissions,
Mm,
right? And that when you open up in the beginning, the fact that you have this crime against a child,
hmm.
not just a child, a little girl, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just some things that just, if you want to get somebody's attention,
Hmm.
you say something happened to a little girl that feels
Hmm.
like it could be something um something wayward is happening, right? Nothing, and it's not a natural cause, and it seems like there's this pattern emerging, right?
Mm-hmm.
You already have us like leaning forward, and you have our attention, and her the way that she chose to describe things and cause it to unfold sort of gave her permission to take you on the next level of it. So that when she
Yeah.
goes from describing a body to describing this plant to describing these interactions to describing this scent, this it just became it sort of becomes this sense of permissions and almost as if pressing up against your level of sensitivity
Mm-hmm.
to the subject matter and to how the story is beginning to turn because of this piece of information. And then she double clicks on it because then it's also about how does this affect Camille's mental stability?
Mm-hmm.
How does this affect Camille's relationships? And how does this basically shapes Camille's identity?
Yeah.
And so it's like you're doing all of this. I couldn't imagine how many edits it would have taken to do
Yeah.
this, but I feel like her sort of doing this, I was telling Rachel in the beginning, I felt like this story was all gas, no brakes. So she just kept sort of, and it wasn't a push where I feel like if she would have sort of thrusted it in your face, you would have left a long time ago. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like she understood that she was dealing with something very sensitive.
Yeah.
And so it didn't make her pull back. It just dictated her pace. It
Yeah.
was a constant, steady, y'all can't see my hand probably in the constant, steady push. And that had me unnerved, but I was here for it. The last thing that I have down, in which we sort of are talking about here, is I feel like we sort of had this. We come in and it's sort of very broad. We're looking at something happening in this town. There is this murder of a little girl, or in this potential whisper that it might be a serial situation. And then, as more clues are being disclosed, as Camille is engaging in more conversations, getting to the details that are not as easily accessible to her because of who she is and because of her history in this environment, the responses get start going zeroing in on Camille. It's almost like as if she's in one of those trick rooms and the walls are closing in, and she feels the pressure of that because she isn't quite cleared of her ailments.
Yeah.
It hasn't been that long. It
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been removed long enough. There's not
Yeah.
enough of an understanding. So you already are dealing with someone that is not 100, like not at capacity. She's
Mm-hmm.
just barely over.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about this in characters, that she's having all these sort of vices that kind of comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what she's doing in the story is she's sort of going inward with it. And as an editor, I love seeing it, but as a writer, I totally can appreciate it because that is not something that's easy to do. Because as you're going in, you have to have the audience with you or they check out because
Mm-hmm.
they've got to buy into it.
Yeah.
And this is not an easy story to buy into.
Yeah.
And so it's like, listen, y'all, I probably will never say this again anywhere else. You got to have your lady balls. That's what
I don't know what I was expecting. That was absolutely not it.
Listen, your eyes round. I saw it. But you just got to go for it. And I feel like she just went for it and she had to land where she did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any misstep, it all would have came crashing down.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's right. Just like you said,
Which part?
Honestly, all of it. You need to gird your lady loins, okay? Because we have got a whole
Rachel,
situation.
you picked this book. You will not say lady loins, okay? Listen, you picked this book. We talk about all that anatomy from my books, okay? I was like,
see, the people are already ready. They're like, oh no, this is the least shocking.
Tap out.
But this to pull something off like this requires, like you said, masterful handling. It's very easy to get wrong. And I see it go wrong in crime stories very often, right? Where the gore feels just like gore. And the plot and the internal arc or the theme that, the author was aiming at, where those things work at cross purposes or diverge from each other, where it feels like our attention is split between, well, here's like the internal thing over here and here's the external thing over here. And so this work is like, it requires so much intention. But she also, like, because she went all the way there, it's almost like it required twice as much, right?
Yes.
Because the likelihood that this would put off a reader and send them the other direction, high, right? The moment you get off track, your reader they've already been through so much. They're going to be like, no, all right, you like we're one step too far or one step too soon, and they're out of there. And so what's worth being aware of is that she makes it look effortless because it's all so entwined. This is very, very difficult to pull off. And that's also what makes it so masterfully done, because she does it so well and makes it look easy.
There was one scene, and I'm not going to give the scene away, but there was one scene where I just felt like my whole entire chest, like I couldn't breathe. When she was calling Curry that time and she was trying to whisper into the phone and he's like, wait, what are you saying? And then she just blurted it out. I was just like, okay, I cannot take this. But there's something to be said. And this is the last thing that I have to say for this episode about this. But I think there's something to be said about your authorial voice, that this really, I mean, you get caught up in the fact that it's a little bit like, like, like I'm not inviting her over in my house. So, listen, this is creativeness. Y'all know I can't wink. So y'all got to take this fake wink as a wink. But there's something about your authorial voice and your level of creativity and why you write and what you want to bring into the space to be able to do this and have the plot so in tuned to the transformation that you wanted or lack thereof of the character, that they are so intertwined that you cannot have one without the other, because they were sort of moving, even if not in tandem, that they were playing off of each other, all so that it will point at this thing or two that the author really wants to explore. That is some amazing stuff. And I don't know if that's true for every single book and every single writer, but if that is true for you and you do it like this, come on.
Yeah.
Now, I would normally say sign me up 10 times, but I'm not going to say that here because I'm not going to.
It's a miracle I got through the one. We're just going to, you go, girl, over there. You just
listen, Rachel just saved you, because if it wasn't for Rachel, okay. But if it is you, and if it is that you have something that you want to say, you it's like sort of like that saying, nobody cares what you say until they know that you care, or whatever that saying is. People are not here for your soapbox, even if this is your book. So being able to do this, we are here for her soapbox. Because we are trying to figure out what the heck is going on with these people, and why did it get this far out there, and why did everybody ignore all this, and why the people that seem the sanest are the drunkest, and all these little things that all amount to her getting you to lean in to hear what she has to say about the treatment of women and generational trauma and voices that are being essentially silenced, and multiple voices having the same or similar experience, but responding to it in different ways. And so it sort of I think it just really, I said all that to say, I think it did a great job for that. And I think if you're someone that you have that sort of aspiration to not just write to entertain, but write to say something, Now, we could go down the whole thing about what she was saying. However, if you're doing it to say something, this is one of those moments where you're like, wow, like she did that.
Yeah, and I think again, if you're wanting to do that in fiction, this is I'll say it's an object lesson. It's not the only one that does it. So again, if this is like, okay, I don't want to say that at all. I don't want to go anywhere near that. But because right, the thing is like if you have something you want to say, but you're choosing to say it in fiction, then you have to wrap it in fiction. Because if we just like you said about the soapbox, right? It's like if you only want to do your soapbox, write nonfiction. Like then let people know up front that this is what we're doing and this is the way in which you want to express whatever that thing is. But if you're doing it in fiction, then it's sort of like fiction, then it becomes the opportunity, right? The way to express it and to like help your reader to really take on and understand what you want to say rather than again alienating them by trying to break through fiction when they're like, I signed up for a story, and you're like, joke's on you, I signed up to tell you this thing that I really want to tell you, and then they're like, oh, right. And it can feel like that, where it feels like the author reached out and just like grabbed you and was like, I'm trying to say something to you, and you're like, okay.
No, I'm not what I'm saying. I'm fighting. You know what I'm saying? Okay.
Dana, if you watch out, Dana will punch back through the book, okay? I'm saying I'm sitting here getting shaken up. Dana will fight back, so watch out.
Which makes my falling that much harder because I'm fighting the whole way. But I think this is also one of those opportunities where it is a little bit much for me. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's easier for you to see the work that's being done when the scale is, because let me tell you, it is on. At no moment did she turn it off. Yeah. So you are going to see. And I just feel like on that level, like it's just mad kudos and respect. So before we sign out from talking about the plot here in Sharp Objects, is there anything else that you wanted us to touch on before we close out this episode?
No, ma'am. I've said my piece. There's obviously so much more that we could talk about, but the things that were on my list that we should talk about have been completed.
and we have 3 more episodes to go. I mean, 2 more episodes to go. So hey, they can keep the party going.
There are plenty more.
It honestly, it is, y'all. Say a prayer for me, okay? Now. So with that said, thank you so much as always for joining us for this episode. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe wherever you engage with us in this podcast. We'd absolutely love that. For more information, you can visit us online at storydeepdive.com. And we will be back next week to talk about characters. Listen, if y'all thought plot was off the chain, characters is where we're going to be rolling our eyes and wondering what is wrong with Rachel. Not just like
the only reason that's going to happen for them is because they don't talk to me on a day-to-day basis, so they're only wondering that some of the time versus all of the time.
Oh, with that said, we are out. Take care. Have a fantastic day. And as always, happy writing. Goodbye.